The illusion of partnership. I stood at the base of the steps leading to the jet, the hum of the engines filling the air, the scent of burning fuel thick in my nostrils. The sun was setting behind the tarmac, casting long shadows, and yet, all I could focus on was my wife. My own wife, standing at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, gaze colder than I had ever seen it. "Only family is allowed," she said. The words didn't hit immediately. They hovered in the air for a moment, as if they needed time to process, to sink their claws into my chest. I laughed, not out of amusement, but out of sheer disbelief. "That's a joke, right?" She didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just tilted her head slightly, impatient. "You're not on the list. Only board members and family are invited to this trip." Board members? Family? I clenched my jaw. "And what exactly am I, Sophia?" She sighed, exasperated, like I was some clueless intern, not the man who built her empire with his own two hands. "Look, you knew this was a strategic business retreat. There's no point in making this personal." "No point?" I took a slow, deliberate step back, scanning the faces already seated inside. The company I built, the product I created, the team I personally trained. And yet, I was the outsider? "Understood," I said, my voice even. I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me react. I refused to let her think she had the power to break me. Her assistant stepped forward, already motioning to security, as if I was some nobody loitering on the runway. The sheer audacity of it almost made me laugh again. I took another step back, watching as the jet doors sealed shut, as the engines roared to life, as my wife, my supposed partner, took off without me. I stood there, watching as the jet shrank into the horizon. My reflection in the glass windows of the terminal showed a man I barely recognized. A man who had given everything and was left with nothing. No, that wasn't true. She thought she had erased me from her success? She had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because if she wanted me gone, if she truly wanted to wipe away my presence from the empire we built together, then I would do something even better. I would erase her empire entirely. The beginning of us. I remember the first time I saw Sophia. She wasn't the woman she is today. Polished, ruthless, sitting atop an empire that bore my fingerprints but none of my name. No, back then, she was scrappy, fighting tooth and nail to keep her failing tech startup from crashing into the abyss of forgotten ideas. I had heard about her before I met her. She had a reputation in the industry, not for innovation, but for her ability to sell a vision. She could talk. Investors loved her because she had the confidence of someone who belonged in boardrooms, even if she didn't fully understand the technology she was pitching. And that's where she was struggling. Sophia had connections. She had influence. But she lacked the foundation. The raw, unshakable substance to back up the dreams she spun in investor meetings. And then there was me. A software engineer, but not just any engineer. I had something people had been chasing for years. A revolutionary algorithm that could change the industry. Hypersync. It started as a passion project in my small, dimly lit apartment, the kind of thing tech nerds dream about but never expect to go anywhere. An AI-driven automation software that could optimize business operations in real time, adapting without human intervention. It was brilliant. It was unstoppable. It just needed the right stage. And Sophia? She had the stage. Our paths crossed at a tech summit. I had barely been able to scrape together enough money for a ticket, spending the last of my savings to be in a room filled with people who didn't even know my name. Meanwhile, she was there as a guest speaker, talking about innovation while her own company was circling the drain. She saw me before I even saw her. I was in the demo hall, showing a group of skeptical attendees what Hypersync could do on my laptop. The moment the screen displayed its seamless adaptability, data flows updating in real time, entire business infrastructures recalibrating with zero lag. I saw her watching me from across the room. She waited until the crowd thinned before she approached. "You made this?" There was something sharp about her tone, something calculated. I nodded. "Yeah." She smiled, but it wasn't the polite kind. It was the kind that hinted at opportunity. "I think we need to talk." A deal that changed everything. That conversation lasted hours. She asked questions, real questions, not just about the technology, but about me, who I was, what I wanted, what my endgame was. I told her the truth. I don't care about fame. I just want this to exist. I want it to be used. That's when she said the words that altered my entire future. You have the brains. I have the resources. We'd be unstoppable together. It was the perfect pitch. She told me about her struggling startup, how she was on the verge of losing investor confidence. But if we merge your software with my infrastructure, we can redefine the industry. It wasn't just flattery. It was real. And for the first time, I saw a path forward for my work that didn't involve me sitting alone in a dark room, hoping someone took notice. So I said yes. From two strangers to partners. The next few years were a blur of hard work, late nights, and blind faith. I poured my entire soul into refining Hypersync, making it sharper, faster, more adaptive than anything the world had ever seen. Meanwhile, Sophia worked her magic, securing funding, partnerships, press coverage. It was exhilarating. We weren't just business partners. We were equals. Or at least, that's what I thought. Somewhere along the way, the late-night strategy meetings turned into shared dinners. The professional admiration turned into something deeper. Before I even realized it, I was in love with her. I saw her as the person who believed in me when no one else did. She saw my potential, championed my work, fought to bring it into the world. And in return, I trusted her completely. We got married before the company even took off. It felt like a natural step, like we were sealing our commitment not just to each other, but to our vision. Hypersync wasn't just a company. It was our child, the thing we built together, the thing we were going to share forever. Or so I thought. The first red flag. At first, it was small things. Sophia would take press interviews alone, brushing off my presence as if I was just some behind-the-scenes tech guy. The investors started associating Hypersync solely with her, treating me as if I was her employee rather than her co-founder. I noticed that, in meetings, she would correct people who referred to Hypersync as our company, subtly shifting the language to imply that it was hers. I didn't say anything. I convinced myself that it didn't matter. We were a team, weren't we? What was the point in arguing over something as petty as credit when we were both reaping the rewards of our success? But looking back, that was the moment the balance shifted. That was when I should have seen the warning signs. Because Sophia wasn't just ambitious. She wasn't just driven. She was hungry. And soon, I would find out just how much she was willing to consume to stay on top. The shift in power. At first, it was easy to ignore the changes. Success does that. It blinds you to the little details, the subtle shifts and dynamics that don't seem important until it's too late. When we were struggling, when we were fighting together to make Hypersync a reality, there was no room for ego. No space for power struggles. We were two halves of a whole, working toward the same goal. But once the money started rolling in, once the investors started throwing millions at us, everything changed. Or maybe she changed. At first, the changes were so gradual that I barely noticed them. She took on more media interviews, and I let her. It made sense. Sophia was the face of the company, the one who charmed investors, who made deals happen. She had the personality for it, the confidence, the connections. I was fine being in the background. I wasn't in it for the fame. Then, slowly, the language changed. At board meetings, she stopped referring to our company. It became her company. Hypersync is a product of my vision, she'd say. When I started this company, I knew we were going to revolutionize the industry. I'd sit there, forcing a smile, nodding, convincing myself that the wording didn't matter, that she didn't really mean it that way. But it wasn't just words. She started making executive decisions without me. A major partnership with a government agency? I found out through a press release. A new expansion strategy that shifted focus away from my original vision? She discussed it with the board before consulting me. The company's branding was suddenly centered entirely around her. The official website no longer listed me as co-founder, just as lead developer. I confronted her about it once, sitting in our sleek, glass-walled office overlooking the city. Sophia, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, we built this together. Why do I feel like I'm being pushed out? She sighed, barely looking up from her laptop. You're overthinking it. Investors like a strong leader, someone they can rally behind. The public likes a face they can recognize. We both know you're not comfortable with that. I frowned. That's not the point. The point is, you're erasing me from the story. She laughed, shaking her head. Don't be dramatic. Everyone knows you're a part of this. That was a lie. The world didn't know, because she had made sure of it. The biggest mistake of my life. Then came the share transfer. Sophia called it a strategic move. We need to consolidate our power, she had said, lounging on the couch in our penthouse, sipping wine like we weren't talking about the future of my life's work. The board thinks it would be more stable if all major shares were under one name. Less legal complications, fewer risks when making bold moves. I frowned, my gut twisting. What risks? She waved a hand dismissively. Nothing serious. Just a formality, really. It won't change anything between us. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. I should have seen it. I should have questioned why she was suddenly so eager to merge everything into her control. But I didn't. Because I trusted her. Because I was a fool. And so, I signed the documents. I signed away my stake in the company. My official ownership. My control. Sophia smiled as she kissed me on the cheek. See? We're a team. This just makes things cleaner. I remember holding the pen a moment too long before setting it down. Something in the back of my mind told me I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. And I had. The unraveling. After that, everything spiraled faster than I could stop it. Sophia grew bolder. She started hosting exclusive executive meetings that I wasn't invited to. When I asked her about them, she shrugged. It's just business strategy. You don't like boardroom politics anyway. The next week, I found out that my personal projects within the company were being reassigned to new leads. My teams were being told to report to her directly. Then came the final blow. The company was preparing for a massive global expansion, an event that would be the biggest milestone in Hypersync's history. I should have been front and center, should have been one of the key people leading the charge. Instead, Sophia scheduled a private jet trip for the board. An exclusive strategy retreat. I wasn't invited. I only found out when I saw the itinerary sitting on her desk. I confronted her. You didn't even tell me about this trip. She barely looked up. I didn't think you'd be interested. It's more of a PR move than anything. You've always hated that stuff. I stared at her, the realization settling like a weight in my chest. I co-founded this company, Sophia. She sighed, clearly bored with my objections. Yes, and you'll still be here when we get back. What's the big deal? The big deal was that she had made it perfectly clear where I stood. The big deal was that she had already decided I was expendable. I clenched my fists. I gave up everything for this company. For you. Finally, she looked up, but there was no regret in her eyes. No hesitation. Just a cool, detached confidence. And it's appreciated, she said. But things evolve. You can't take this personally. The beginning of my revenge. That was the moment it all crystallized. The moment I stopped fooling myself. She wasn't my partner anymore. She wasn't my wife. She was my enemy. And soon, she would realize just how much damage I could do. The betrayal in the sky. The moment I stepped onto the tarmac, I felt it. That strange, hollow sensation in my gut. The one that told me something wasn't right, even before I had a reason to confirm it. It was the same feeling I had the day I signed over my shares to Sophia, the same quiet whisper of something shifting beneath my feet. Only this time, I wouldn't ignore it. I walked toward the jet, the heat of the engines pulsing through the air. I could already see the others boarding, executives, board members, a few of the senior engineers I had personally mentored, people I had built this empire with. It was supposed to be a celebration. The company's biggest expansion yet. A milestone that should have belonged to both of us. But the moment I reached the bottom of the stairs, she was there. Standing at the top, arms folded, looking down at me with something unreadable in her expression. I frowned. You coming down? She didn't move. Instead, she gave me a small, cool smile and said words that I would never forget. Only family is allowed. It took a second to register. A second too long. I let out a short laugh, because surely this was a joke. What? But she didn't laugh with me. She didn't even blink. You're not on the list, she said, her voice even. It's a private retreat, strictly for board members and family. Something in my chest turned to ice. The company I built, the product I created, the legacy I poured my life into, and I wasn't even considered part of it anymore. I looked at the others already inside, people who used to answer to me, who once called me their mentor, their leader. Some of them wouldn't even meet my eyes. And I knew then. They had known about this. They had all known. I took a slow step back, scanning her face for any hint of regret, any sign that she was second-guessing herself. There was none. "You're serious," I said quietly. She sighed. "This isn't personal. The board just thought it would be best if we moved forward with a more streamlined leadership structure." A more streamlined leadership structure. I wanted to ask her when she had decided to become the enemy, when exactly she had gone from being my partner to being the person who had engineered my removal from my own company. But I didn't, because I already knew. The moment everything changed, I could have fought it, could have argued, could have demanded she tell me the real reason she was doing this. But I didn't, because in that moment, standing at the base of that jet, feeling the heat of the sun on my face, hearing the distant hum of engines ready to take off without me, I saw the bigger picture. This wasn't just a business trip. It was a statement, a declaration. Sophia wasn't just excluding me from this trip. She was excluding me from everything. She was rewriting history, erasing my name, making it so that when the story of Hypersync was told, I was nothing more than a footnote in her success. And if I fought her here, if I made a scene, if I begged, then I would be exactly what she wanted me to be, a desperate man clinging to something that was no longer his. So I made a decision. I took a slow, measured breath, forcing my pulse to steady. And then, I stepped back. I nodded once, keeping my voice even. "Understood." Sophia blinked, just for a fraction of a second. She had expected me to react differently, expected me to fight, to argue, to beg for my place. But I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I turned away, walked off the tarmac, and listened as the engines roared to life behind me. I didn't look back, not when the wheels lifted off the ground, not when the jet disappeared into the sky, not when my entire world was supposedly leaving without me, because she thought she had one. She thought she had finally cut me out completely. She had no idea she had just handed me the ultimate revenge, the birth of my plan. By the time I reached my car, my mind was already working. Sophia had spent years convincing herself that she was untouchable, that she was the true mastermind behind Hypersync, that I was just a technical footnote in her empire. And because of that, she had made a fatal mistake. She had forgotten who built this company from the ground up. She had forgotten who created the foundation that held it together. She had forgotten that the core of everything, the software, the security, the very system that powered Hypersync, was still mine. And now, I had nothing left to lose. The last thing she expected. As I drove away from the airstrip, my hands tightened on the wheel. She had taken everything from me. But there was one thing she didn't take. Something she didn't even realize was still in my possession. The source code. The security keys. The backdoor I had built into the system from the very beginning. A safety measure, a kill switch, something I had installed in the early days when I still believed that we were in this together. She thought she had shut me out. She thought she had erased me. She thought she had one. But she had no idea. Because now, for the first time since this all began, I was no longer playing defense. Now, I was going to take everything back. Not just my company. Not just my legacy. I was going to erase her empire, brick by brick, line by line, until there was nothing left but ashes. The first strike. I didn't go home that night. There was no point. The house, the penthouse we had bought together when Hypersync's valuation hit its first billion, felt more like a museum now. A carefully curated display of her success, where my presence had been reduced to little more than an afterthought. No, I needed to be somewhere else. Somewhere quiet, where I could think, where I could plan. So I drove to the one place that still felt undeniably mine. The private development server I had rented out years ago when Hypersync was still an idea, a dream I had coded into existence line by line. No one knew about it. Not Sophia, not the board, not even the engineers who worked under me. This was my failsafe. And tonight, it would become the beginning of her downfall. The code no one knew existed. Hypersync wasn't just another tech company. It was an ecosystem, a self-sustaining automation network that powered everything from high-frequency trading firms to global supply chains. It was designed to be impenetrable, its security layers tighter than any government system. But there was one flaw, a flaw I had built in from the very beginning. Back when Sophia and I were still partners, when I still believed in us, I had written a private failsafe into the source code, not as an act of paranoia, but as a safety measure, a way to reclaim control if anything ever went wrong. It was buried deep, hidden beneath layers of encrypted pathways, masked as an unassuming, rarely accessed subroutine. To anyone else, it looked like a dormant function, a harmless fragment of forgotten code. But to me, it was a kill switch, the first move. I logged in. The familiarity of the interface, the blinking cursor, the silent hum of a system waiting for input. It all felt like stepping into my true home. She thought she had locked me out of my own empire. But she was wrong. With a few keystrokes, I accessed the master framework. I took my time. Sophia was on a plane, surrounded by her new board, her loyal executives, basking in her illusion of power. She wouldn't see this coming. She never did. First, I ran a diagnostic. The numbers flashed across the screen. Hundreds of servers, millions of active users, a network worth billions, and all of it was still tied to my code. Then, I executed the first command, a simple one, a security reconfiguration. On the surface, nothing changed. Hypersync continued running as usual, but beneath the surface, every executive-level access key was revoked. No one, not Sophia, not the board, not a single top-level employee, could log in or make any critical system changes. Except for me. I leaned back, watching as the system reset itself. She wouldn't notice immediately. Not yet. But soon, very soon, she would wake up to a world where she was no longer in control. The next morning, my phone rang at 6:07 a.m. I didn't answer. It rang again and again. Finally, I picked up, just to hear her voice, sharp and frantic. "Aaron," she snapped. No greeting, no pretense, just pure panic. "Hypersync is locked down. We can't access anything. What the hell did you do?" I smiled. It was satisfying, listening to the cracks in her usually composed demeanor, hearing the underlying fear in her voice. I kept my tone casual. "Good morning, Sophia. Something wrong?" She exhaled sharply, frustration clear in every syllable. "Don't play games. The system is rejecting all executive logins. The entire board is locked out. The engineers can't override it. I know you did something." I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the silence between us. Then, I said the words I knew she never expected to hear. "Sorry, but only family is allowed." The moment she knew, there was dead silence on the other end of the line. I could almost picture her, standing in some luxury resort, phone clenched in her hand, her carefully constructed world starting to fracture. She started, but I cut her off. "Let's get one thing straight, Sophia," I said, my voice cold now. "You didn't build Hypersync. I did. You didn't design the system. I did. You don't own it. I do." She tried to interrupt, but I kept going. "And if you think for 1 second that you can erase me from the company I created, then you don't understand the first thing about how any of this works." A sharp inhale. Then, her voice dropped to something more dangerous. "You think you can take it back?" She hissed. "You think you can win?" I let out a short laugh. "Sophia," I said, leaning forward, lowering my voice like I was letting her in on a secret. "I already did." Then, I hung up. The beginning of her end. By the time she landed, it was too late. Hypersync's security system had been completely overhauled. All critical operations required my biometric authentication. The board was in shambles, investors demanding answers. And Sophia? For the first time, she realized what she had done. She had undermined me. She had betrayed me. She had shut me out of my own empire. But in doing so, she had forgotten something far more important. I was the one who had built this from nothing. I knew every line of code, every system flaw, every hidden failsafe. And now, I was going to burn it to the ground. The collapse begins. I didn't go back to sleep after hanging up on Sophia. I just sat there, staring at my phone, watching as the missed calls piled up, one after another, her name flashing over and over like a desperate heartbeat. By 7 a.m., the calls stopped, not because she had given up, but because she had finally realized the truth. This wasn't just a minor system glitch. This wasn't something her engineers could patch in a few hours. This was the beginning of the end, and I had written the script. The desperation begins. At exactly 8:15 a.m., I got a text. Not from Sophia, from one of my old engineers, someone who had been loyal to me before Sophia started restructuring the company to squeeze me out. They're panicking. The board is losing its mind. She's trying to call an emergency meeting, but no one can access anything. What did you do? I smirked, typing back slowly, just reminding them who built the system. Her first attempt to fix it. Sophia was smart. I had to give her that. She didn't waste time. She called in every expert she could find, top-tier cybersecurity specialists, former government encryption analysts, even a few of my old team members she had kept around after I left. They all ran into the same wall. The lockout wasn't just a simple admin-level restriction. It was a deep structural override, something embedded so far into the system that even if they tried to rewrite access pathways, the code would rebuild itself in real time. Hypersync was shutting her out at the DNA level, and there was only one person who could unlock it. Me. The first call from the board. By 10 a.m., my phone rang again. Not Sophia this time. One of the board members. I let it ring twice before answering. Aaron, the voice on the other end said, strained but carefully measured. We seem to have encountered a technical issue. I assume you're aware of it? I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch for a moment before answering. I might be. A pause. Then, a shift in tone. Less businesslike, more frustrated. What the hell are you playing at? The entire company is on lockdown. We're bleeding millions by the second. I glanced at my laptop screen, where the live feed of Hypersync's stock price was already plummeting. I could almost hear the panic in their voices from here. You'll have to be more specific, I said, feigning confusion. Are you asking for my professional expertise or just yelling for the sake of it? More silence. Then, a reluctant exhale. We need your help. There it was. The first crack in their arrogance. I tapped my fingers against the desk, considering my next words carefully. You need my help, I repeated. Funny, because just last week, Sophia made it very clear that I was no longer a part of Hypersync. You were never removed, the board member said quickly. That was a misunderstanding. Save it. My voice dropped. You locked me out of my own creation. You let her erase my name, strip my influence, humiliate me. And now that everything is falling apart, you want my help? The silence stretched long this time. I could feel his discomfort, his anger, his helplessness. Then, finally, what do you want? I smiled. Nothing. Yet. Then I hung up. Sophia's breaking point. By noon, she finally cracked. She didn't call. She showed up at my door. I wasn't surprised. Sophia wasn't the type to beg over the phone. She needed to be in control, needed to stand in front of someone and make them see her authority. Except this time, she didn't have any. I opened the door to find her standing there in a sharp, designer suit, looking impeccable as always. But there was something different in her eyes. For the first time since this war started, she looked afraid. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. To what do I owe the pleasure? She exhaled sharply, her jaw tightening. Let me in. I didn't move. No. Her eyes flared. Aaron, I don't have time for games. I smiled. Neither do I. She hesitated, then forced herself to take a breath, calm her tone. Look, she said. We can fix this. We? I echoed, raising an eyebrow. Last time I checked, there was no we anymore. You made sure of that. Her lips pressed together. I made a mistake. I laughed. A real, sharp laugh. Oh, now it's a mistake? When you left me standing on the tarmac like an outsider, when you let your board replace me, when you stole everything I built and acted like I never existed? Her fingers curled into fists at her sides. I did what I had to do for the company. Then do what you do best, Sophia, I said. Talk your way out of this. Convince the board you've got it all under control. Because as far as I'm concerned, this isn't my problem anymore. Her breath hitched. Just for a second. She was losing control. I stepped forward, lowering my voice to something almost dangerous. Hypersync was mine before it was ever yours, I said. And now? You don't own it anymore. You can't do this, she whispered. This is my life, Aaron. I tilted my head. Funny. You didn't care about that when you erased my life from the company. She swallowed hard. For the first time, she didn't have a response. So I leaned in, delivering the final blow. Consider this your first lesson in losing everything, I murmured. Then I shut the door in her face. The chaos spreads. By evening, the fallout had spread. Investors began pulling out, terrified of the instability. Customers started losing access to Hypersync services, causing major corporations billions in potential losses. News outlets began reporting on the crisis inside Hypersync, hinting at an internal sabotage. And Sophia? She had no way out, because the only person who could fix it was me. And I had no intention of saving her. I was only getting started. The company in free fall. I woke up the next morning to chaos. Not my own. Hers. Sophia's empire, the one she had spent years crafting while erasing my name from it, was burning to the ground. And she knew it. The first thing I did was check the stock reports. Hypersync had dropped another 30% overnight. By now, it wasn't just investors panicking. The companies that relied on Hypersync's AI were starting to feel the impact. Logistics networks were failing. Banking systems were glitching. AI-driven trading firms were hemorrhaging millions because they couldn't access the software's real-time market predictions. And through it all, I sat back, sipping my coffee, watching the world slowly realize the truth. Hypersync wasn't Sophia's creation. It was mine. And without me, it was collapsing. The board's last-ditch effort. By mid-morning, my phone rang again. The board. Not Sophia this time. They must have finally realized that she wasn't in control anymore. I let it ring a few times before answering. Gentlemen, I said smoothly, to what do I owe the pleasure? We need to talk, came the clipped response. This has gone on long enough. I smiled. Has it? You're going to kill the company, another voice snapped. Do you have any idea how many billions are at stake? We can negotiate, but this? I cut him off. Funny. No one cared about my stake when you all let Sophia push me out. So why should I care now? Silence. Then, the voice softened. Look, whatever personal grievances you have against Sophia, we can fix it. Just restore access to the system, and we'll? I chuckled. You think this is about grievances? They didn't get it. They still thought this was just about revenge, about me throwing a tantrum because I got left out of a boardroom. They didn't understand that I wasn't fighting for my place back in the company. I was tearing it apart from the inside out. You had your chance, I said, my tone calm but firm. You chose your side. Now, you get to watch what happens next. Then I hung up. Sophia's desperation grows. By noon, my apartment intercom buzzed. I didn't even have to check to know who it was. Sophia. She was running out of options, and I was the only person left who could stop the bleeding. I took my time opening the door. Let her stew in her own panic for a few extra seconds. When I finally let her in, she didn't even waste time pretending to be composed. Her usual confidence, the steel-spined, ice-veined presence she carried in boardrooms, was gone. Her hair was slightly out of place. Her breathing was too sharp. And her eyes? They weren't angry. They weren't even furious. They were scared. We need to fix this, she said immediately, stepping into my apartment like she still had authority over me. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Fix what? She exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through her hair. Hypersync. The system. Whatever you did, you need to undo it. Why would I do that? Her jaw clenched. Because the entire company is falling apart. This is bigger than just you and me, Aaron. If you keep this up, Hypersync will be finished. I gave her a slow, measured look. Good. Her breath hitched. Just a little. Enough for me to see the moment it truly hit her. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't waiting for a deal, a payout. or an apology. I was watching her empire collapse and enjoying every second of it. The reality of her situation. You don't understand, she said, trying to recalculate, trying to find the right leverage to regain control. This is going to cost you too. Your name is still tied to Hypersync. Your reputation? My reputation? I interrupted, laughing. You mean the one you spent years burying? The one you erased from every press release, every article, every award you took credit for? She flinched. I took a step forward, lowering my voice. I don't care about Hypersync anymore, Sophia. I care about watching you lose everything you stole from me. Her lips parted, but no words came. Because now, for the first time, she truly understood. This wasn't about business. This wasn't about the board, or the company, or the stock price. This was personal, and there was no fixing it. The last attempt, she swallowed, visibly forcing herself to soften. Aaron, she said, her voice lowering, trying to sound like the woman I once loved. We built this together. You don't have to destroy it. We can start over. We can. I smiled. No, Sophia. Her mouth snapped shut. I stepped closer, until there was barely any space between us, and said the words that finally broke her. You already did that, I whispered. The moment you looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't family anymore. Tears burned in her eyes. Real ones. I had seen Sophia fake cry in business meetings before. I had watched her manipulate emotions like a master chess player. But this was real. She knew it was over. I stepped back, keeping my expression neutral. You should go, I said simply. Her breath shuddered. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out. The final blow. By evening, the news headlines were everywhere. Hypersync faces unprecedented crisis as CEO Sophia, last name, fails to regain control. Investors flee as Hypersync's stock crashes. Was Hypersync's true genius erased from history? And the best part? The media was finally digging into the truth. Interviews with former employees. Old articles mentioning my name before it was wiped from company records. Whispers about how maybe Sophia hadn't been the real mastermind after all. By midnight, Hypersync had lost half its valuation. And Sophia? She was finished. Not just as CEO. As a legend, a business icon. A name that once commanded respect in every boardroom. Because now, the world knew. She wasn't the woman who built Hypersync. She was the woman who lost it. And I was the man who made it happen. The final blow. The morning after Sophia walked out of my apartment, the world had already shifted. Her empire was crumbling in real time, and this time, there was no coming back. I watched the news unfold over a cup of coffee, my laptop open, multiple stock reports flashing across the screen. Hypersync had lost 60% of its valuation overnight. Sophia had spent years building an image of power, control, and innovation, convincing the world that she alone was the force behind Hypersync's success. But in the span of 24 hours, that illusion had been shattered. The media vultures who once worshipped her were now tearing her apart, picking at every flaw, every decision she had made, every questionable tactic she had used to climb to the top. It was almost poetic. She had spent so much time erasing me from the company's history, convincing herself that she had all the power. But now, she was just another fallen CEO. Another scandal-ridden executive whose name was being dragged through the mud. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. The day of reckoning. By midday, my phone buzzed again. Not from Sophia this time. From her lawyer. I let it ring. Twice. Then, I answered. Yes? There was a pause, then a calm, measured voice. Mr. Carter, we'd like to discuss an arrangement to... No. Silence. Excuse me, the lawyer asked. I leaned back in my chair, stretching out my legs. I said no. There's no arrangement. No deal. No negotiation. The voice on the other end didn't waver, but I could hear the underlying tension. Mr. Carter, Sophia is willing to make certain concessions. I laughed. Actually laughed. Sophia doesn't have anything left to bargain with, I said. She lost her company, her investors, her reputation. So tell me, what exactly is she offering? A longer pause this time. Then, The lawyer tried a different angle. We're willing to restore your position at Hypersync. You'd be reinstated as co-founder and... I cut him off. Hypersync doesn't exist anymore, I said smoothly. At least, not in the way she thinks it does. Silence. Then, a breath. What do you mean? I smiled. You'll see soon enough. And then, I hung up. The final stage. By late afternoon, I was ready. I had been waiting for this moment, planning for it. The collapse of Hypersync wasn't enough. I needed to rebuild it, but under my name this time. So I made the final move. With a few keystrokes, I executed the last phase of my takeover. Hypersync's patents? Transferred. The AI's core structure? Migrated. The original technology? Sealed. Every valuable asset that made Hypersync a billion-dollar company was no longer under Sophia's control. The company still existed in name, but its soul, its foundation, its power, it was mine again. Sophia's last desperate attempt. At 7 p.m., I got one last text. From her. Not her lawyer. Not the board. Her. Meet me. One last time. Hotel Langford. 8 p.m. I stared at the message, debating whether to even bother entertaining it. Then, I decided. I would go. Not because she deserved another conversation, but because I wanted to see the look in her eyes when she realized it was over. The final meeting. I arrived exactly at 8 p.m. The hotel bar was nearly empty, the dim lighting casting long shadows over the polished mahogany. I spotted her immediately. Sophia sat in the corner booth, a glass of untouched wine in front of her. She looked different. Not broken, not defeated, just tired. I took my time walking over, watching as she lifted her gaze to meet mine. Didn't think you'd come, she murmured. I slid into the seat across from her, resting my arms on the table. I was curious. She let out a soft, humorless chuckle. Curious about what? I studied her, taking in the small changes, the tension in her shoulders, the faint, dark circles under her eyes, the way she wasn't wearing the armor of control anymore. Then, I said, how it feels. She stilled. How what feels? I tilted my head, losing everything. She inhaled sharply, and for a moment, she looked like she was going to snap back, like she was going to fight me one last time. But she didn't. Instead, she looked down at her glass. You were always the smarter one, she admitted quietly. I just talked better. I leaned forward. You stole from me, Sophia. You erased me. And you expected me to just accept it. She swallowed hard. I thought you wouldn't fight back. I gave her a slow, humorless smile. That was your first mistake? She exhaled, gripping the stem of her glass. And your first mistake? I shrugged. Trusting you. A long silence stretched between us. Then, softly, she said, I never stopped loving you, you know? I didn't react, didn't flinch. I just watched her. Because now, I could see what she was doing. The last attempt, the last manipulation, trying to pull me back in, to make me feel something for her again. But that part of me, the part that once would have believed her, once would have wanted to forgive her, was already dead. So I stood up, slid my hands into my pockets, and delivered the final blow. I stopped loving you the second you told me I wasn't family. Her breath caught. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. Not when she called my name. Not when she let out a shaky breath, trying to hold back tears. Not when I stepped out of the hotel, into the night, leaving her alone with everything she had lost. And as I walked away, I knew one thing for certain. This was the last time I would ever see Sophia again. Her new reality. Sophia didn't reach out again after that night. Not a call. Not a text. Nothing. I wasn't surprised. Because what was left to say? She had spent years crafting her own mythology, convincing the world that she was the mastermind behind Hypersync, the one who had built it from the ground up. And for a while, the world had believed her. But now? Now, she was a cautionary tale. The headlines wrote themselves. The morning after our final meeting, the news had already devoured her whole. From CEO to scandal, the fall of Sophia Callaway. Hypersync implodes. Was it built on lies? Once a tech icon, now a pariah. Sophia Callaway's stunning downfall. The press had been brutal, relentless. Every interview she had given, every moment she had taken credit for my work, every deal she had made while pushing me further into the background. It was all under the microscope now. Former employees came forward. Investors publicly distanced themselves. Even her most loyal supporters started walking away, realizing that aligning with her was a sinking ship. And the final blow? Hypersync's board of directors had voted her out. She was officially removed as CEO. A public statement had been released, filled with corporate doublespeak, but the message was clear. Sophia Callaway was no longer the face of the company. She wasn't anything anymore. The consequences she never saw coming. For the first time in years, she was nobody. No more corporate events. No more keynote speeches. No more front-page headlines celebrating her success. Just radio silence. I heard through a mutual contact that she had been trying to sell her remaining shares, desperate to salvage whatever money she could. But with the company in free fall, her stock was practically worthless. She had lost everything. And I had taken it all away from her. My own empire rises. But while she was fading into obscurity, I was doing the opposite. 2 weeks after her removal, I announced something new. Not a company revival. A rebirth. SyncForge. A new AI-driven platform. Sharper, faster, smarter than anything Hypersync had ever been. And the best part? It wasn't just me. I had spent the past few weeks reaching out to every loyal team member Sophia had discarded. The developers, the engineers, the real minds behind the software, the people she had undervalued and overlooked. And they had all come back to me. Not for money, not for status, for revenge. The ultimate payback. When SyncForge launched, it was an immediate success. Investors who had pulled out of Hypersync came to me first. Tech publications that had once praised Sophia were now writing about me. The same reporters who had celebrated her rise were now calling me the true genius behind it all. And Sophia? She was watching it happen. I knew she was. She wouldn't be able to help herself, because this wasn't just a personal betrayal for her. This was her greatest fear coming true. She had spent years making sure the world only knew her name. Now, the world was forgetting her entirely. Her last desperate call. Then, one night, my phone rang. For a second, I almost ignored it. Then, I saw the name. Sophia. I stared at it, debating. Then, slowly, I answered. She didn't say anything at first. I could hear her breathing. Slow, measured. Like she was forcing herself to keep it together. Finally, she spoke. Aaron, she said, voice thinner than I'd ever heard it before. I leaned back in my chair. Sophia. There was a long silence. Then, barely above a whisper, I need help. I didn't react. Didn't let my voice shift. Didn't let her hear the satisfaction I felt deep in my bones. I had been waiting for this. She had spent so long acting like she was untouchable. Like she was the goddess of the tech world. The woman who had everything. Now, she was begging me. I took my time, letting the silence stretch before I finally spoke. Sorry, Sophia. I let out a slow exhale. Only family is allowed. Then, I hung up. And just like that, I ended it for good.